Red lights pulsed across every console in the observation station. Technician Freya Walsh ran diagnostics for the third time that hour, convinced the equipment was broken. The readings made no sense whatsoever. Something massive was approaching from deep space, but it moved in ways that violated every law of physics she understood. The station orbited a dead planet at the edge of Valdran territory. Nothing ever happened here. That was why the Empire posted junior technicians like Freya to monitor the empty darkness. She had expected months of boredom, followed by a transfer to somewhere more interesting. Instead, her equipment screamed warnings about an impossible object traveling faster than light, without using quantum gates. Station Command, this is Observation Post 772. I need someone to verify these readings. Freya transmitted her data to the nearest Imperial facility, 3 light-years away. Response would take 6 hours minimum. The object decelerated. Space itself rippled like water, as something enormous dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Freya's visual sensors captured the moment, and her breath caught in her throat. The ship was beautiful, in a terrifying way. Angular and sharp, its hull seemed to drink in starlight rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered its surface, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The vessel was roughly the same size as a Valdran battlecruiser, but its design suggested completely different engineering principles. Unknown vessel. This is Valdran Observation Station 772. You are in Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately. Freya's voice shook despite her attempts to sound authoritative. Static filled her speakers. Then words formed, translated by her computer, but clearly originating from an unfamiliar language. Valdran Station. This is Human Exploration Vessel Pathfinder. We come in peace. We seek information about the current political situation in this region. Human. The word triggered memories from basic training. Earth. Sol system. Quarantined 600 years ago for being too primitive and too aggressive. Humans weren't supposed to be anywhere near the sector. Pathfinder. Humans are restricted to designated quarantine zones. Your presence here violates Galactic Council protocols. Return to your home system immediately. Silence stretched for several seconds. Then a new voice came through, older and weighted with authority. Station Technician, I'm Commander Isaac Okonkwo of the Pathfinder. With respect, we don't recognize the authority of a council that imprisoned us without trial or representation. We've been monitoring this region for some time. We know the Valdran Empire controls this territory. We're here to establish diplomatic contact. Freya felt panic rising. This was beyond her training and authority. Commander, I'm required to report your presence to Imperial forces. They will respond with military assets. We understand. That's actually why we chose this approach vector. We want to be seen. Hiding would suggest hostile intent. We're being deliberately obvious. The logic made sense, which somehow made everything more unsettling. Humans were supposed to be primitive. The historical record said they barely achieved orbital flight when the quarantine was established. Yet here was a ship that traveled faster than light using unknown technology, operated by people who spoke of long-term surveillance and diplomatic strategy. Freya initiated emergency protocols. Warning beacons activated throughout the sector. Imperial patrol fleets would converge on her position within hours. The Valdran military took border security very seriously. Commander Okonkwo, Imperial forces are en route. I recommend you withdraw before the situation escalates. We'll wait, the commander replied calmly. We've come too far to turn back now. 3 hours later, Freya watched 20 Valdran warships emerge from quantum space. The patrol fleet formed a defensive sphere around her station, weapons powered but not yet targeted. The flagship, Eternal Dominion, took position directly between her station and the human ship. Admiral Roth Kalem commanded the response fleet. His voice came through on official channels, addressing both Freya and the human vessel. Unknown ship claiming to be human. This is Admiral Kalem of the Valdran Imperial Fleet. You are ordered to power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Commander Okonkwo's response was infuriatingly polite. Admiral Kalem, with respect we decline. We're willing to meet with your representatives aboard our ship or neutral ground. We're willing to share information about our capabilities and intentions, but we will not surrender our vessel or crew. Freya watched the tactical displays. The single human ship faced 20 Valdran warships. The power difference was absurd. Okonkwo had to know he couldn't win a fight. Admiral Calum clearly thought the same thing. Commander, you have 30 minutes to reconsider. After that, we will disable your ship and take you into custody by force. Admiral, before you commit to that course of action, I suggest you scan the surrounding space more carefully. Pay particular attention to quantum signatures within 5 million kilometers of your current position. Freya ran the scan Okonkwo suggested. Her blood turned to ice. The space around the patrol fleet was filled with stealth signatures. Hundreds of them. Ships that had been invisible until Okonkwo pointed them out. They weren't hiding anymore. They were revealing themselves deliberately. 200 human vessels materialized around the Valdran fleet. Each one appeared suddenly as their stealth systems deactivated. The patrol fleet was completely surrounded. Admiral Calum's voice lost its confident edge. How long have you been there? We've been shadowing your patrol for 6 days, Admiral. Okonkwo explained. We could have approached you anywhere, anytime. We chose this location because it minimized risk to civilian installations. The observation station has 1 person aboard. Your fleet is entirely military. If something goes wrong, no innocent people get hurt. Freya realized with growing horror that the humans had been protecting her. They had deliberately chosen a confrontation site where she was the only potential civilian casualty, and they positioned themselves to draw fire away from her station. You've been watching us for 6 days, Calum repeated slowly. Your stealth technology is that advanced? Our everything is that advanced, Admiral. We've had 600 years to develop in isolation while you forgot we existed. We used that time productively. The tactical situation was obvious to everyone. The Valdran patrol fleet was outnumbered 10-1 and caught completely by surprise. But Okonkwo made no threatening moves. The human ship simply maintained position, weapons visible but not locked. What do you want? Admiral Calum asked finally. To talk, Okonkwo replied. Just talk. We don't want war. We don't want territory. We want the galaxy to understand that humanity is no longer the primitive species you locked away. We're spacefaring, technologically advanced, and determined to be treated as equals. We're hoping the Valdran Empire will be the first civilization to recognize that reality peacefully. Freya listened to the exchange with a growing sense that history was pivoting around this moment. Everything the Empire believed about humans was wrong. Everything they assumed about the balance of power was outdated. The question was whether pride would prevent adaptation, or whether wisdom would triumph over tradition. Admiral Calum made his decision. Commander Okonkwo, I'm ordering my fleet to stand down. Let's talk. The conference room aboard the Pathfinder looked nothing like Admiral Calum expected. Human ships apparently prioritize function over decoration. Metal walls, simple furniture, and display screens showing tactical data. No art, no symbols of authority, no wasted space. Commander Okonkwo sat across from Calum with 2 other humans. One was a young woman introduced as Lieutenant Sophie Grant, the other an older man named Dr. Raymond Cross. All 3 wore simple gray uniforms without the elaborate rank insignia common in the Valdran military. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Admiral. Okonkwo began. I know the situation is unprecedented. Calum studied the 3 humans carefully. They looked remarkably similar to several species in the galaxy. 2 arms, 2 legs, bilateral symmetry. Nothing in their physical appearance suggested they should be capable of building the technology he'd witnessed. Commander, the historical records say your species was barely orbital when the quarantine was established. That was 600 years ago. Even the most optimistic projections suggested you needed another 2,000 years to reach interstellar capability. How did you accomplish in 6 centuries what should have taken 3,000 years? Dr. Cross leaned forward, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. We cheated, Admiral. When we discovered the temporal monitoring buoys, we didn't just reverse engineer them. We learned from them. Your council left us a technology sample that showed us what was possible. We use that knowledge to skip entire generations of incremental development. You stole our technology, Calum said flatly. We learned from it, Okonkwo corrected. There's a difference. We didn't copy your quantum drive designs. We studied the principles and developed our own approach. Our ships don't use quantum gates. We manipulate gravity fields to compress space. Different method, same result. Lieutenant Grant activated a holographic display. It showed Earth's technological progression over 6 centuries. The curve was steep, almost vertical in places. When humanity learned we were being watched and confined, something fundamental changed in our civilization, Grant explained. Every nation on Earth had been competing against each other. Suddenly we had a common cause, an external challenge that united us. You formed a single government? Calum asked. Eventually, it took decades of negotiation. But yes, Earth unified under a single authority with one primary purpose. Ensure humanity will be strong enough to defend its freedom when the rest of the galaxy finally notices us again. Dr. Cross pulled up different data. We dedicated 30% of our entire planetary economy to space development for 400 years. Every human alive contributed to building our fleet. Every scientist worked on advancing our technology. Every engineer focused on practical applications. We had no choice. We either became strong enough to defend ourselves, or we remained prisoners forever. The scale of commitment shocked Calum. 30% of an entire planet's resources for 4 centuries. The Valdran Empire spent perhaps 5% of its economy on military development, and that was considered excessive by some. You bankrupted yourselves building weapons, Calum observed. We invested in survival, Okonkwo replied. And we didn't just build weapons. We built infrastructure. 34 colony worlds, each self-sufficient and defensible. Research stations throughout our territory. Manufacturing facilities that can produce everything we need. We're not dependent on anyone for anything essential. Lieutenant Grant changed the display again. This time it showed human colonies scattered across 18 star systems. Each one located in defensible positions with clear supply lines and mutual support capability. We studied military history extensively, Grant said. Every successful empire eventually overextended itself. They claimed territory faster than they could effectively defend or administer it. We deliberately avoided that mistake. We grow slowly. We consolidate. We ensure every colony is viable before establishing the next one. Admiral Calum recognized the strategy. It was sound, perhaps too sound. The Valdran Empire controlled 847 systems, but many were poorly integrated and required significant military presence to maintain order. Humans had 34 colonies and apparently absolute control over all of them. You claim you want peace, Calum said, yet you brought 200 warships to this meeting. We brought insurance, Okonkwo corrected. Admiral, we've been monitoring your communications. We know your patrol fleet transmitted tactical data to Imperial High Command. We know reinforcements are probably being prepared. We wanted you to understand that sending more ships won't change the fundamental situation. Which is what exactly? That humanity is no longer a species you can control through military force. We're not claiming we could defeat the entire Valdran Empire. We're saying the cost of conquering us would be higher than any benefit you gain. We've made ourselves too expensive to be worth the effort. Dr. Cross nodded agreement. Economic theory applies to warfare, Admiral. When the cost of conflict exceeds the value of victory, rational actors choose negotiation. We're hoping the Empire is rational. Calum felt insulted by the implication that humans had made themselves not worth conquering. The Empire had never based decisions on mere cost-benefit analysis. There were principles involved. Order, stability, the natural hierarchy of civilizations. Yet he couldn't deny the logic. If humans truly had the capability to inflict serious damage on Imperial forces, the price of absorbing their 34 colonies might indeed exceed the benefit. What are you proposing? Calum asked. Formal recognition of human sovereignty over our claimed territory. Trade agreements on equal terms. Cultural exchange if both sides are interested. And most importantly, A mutual non-aggression treaty. We leave you alone. You leave us alone. We cooperate where interests align and compete peacefully where they don't. The Empire doesn't negotiate with species as equals, Calum said. We have member civilizations, and we have primitives outside our borders. There's no third category. Okonkwo smiled slightly. Then create one admiral, because we're not going to fit into your existing boxes. We're too advanced to be dismissed as primitives. We're too independent to become members. You need a new category. Call us whatever you want. Sovereign partners. Independent associates. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you recognize we have the right to govern ourselves. Lieutenant Grant spoke softly. Admiral, we know this threatens the Empire's self-image. We know it raises questions about why other species don't have the same rights. We're not trying to destabilize your civilization. We're just fighting for our own freedom. Is that really something the Empire wants to go to war over? Calum sat in silence, thinking through the implications. If he recommended recognizing human sovereignty, it would indeed raise uncomfortable questions throughout Imperial space. If he recommended military action, it could lead to a costly conflict with uncertain outcome. Before he could respond, alarms sounded throughout the Pathfinder. Lieutenant Grant checked her console, and her expression hardened. Admiral, your reinforcements just arrived. 300 Valdran warships just entered the sector. They're taking aggressive positions around our fleet. Okonkwo looked at Calum steadily. Did you order them here? No, Calum admitted. High Command must have dispatched them automatically when my patrol reported human contact. Then we have a problem, Okonkwo said quietly. Because your reinforcements don't know we're negotiating. They're going to see 200 human ships and assume the worst. Fleet Commander Dar Kovacs reviewed the tactical situation with growing confidence. 300 fresh Valdran warships had just arrived to support Admiral Calum's patrol. The humans were now outnumbered. Time to remind these primitives about the Empire's power. All ships weapons hot. Target the human vessels. Demand their immediate surrender. Kovacs had fought 12 campaigns during her career. She'd never lost a battle. Today would be no different. Aboard the Pathfinder, alarms continued blaring. Commander Okonkwo stood quickly. Admiral Calum, contact your fleet commander immediately. Tell her we're in the middle of negotiations. Calum activated his communication device. Fleet Commander Kovacs, this is Admiral Calum. Hold your fire. We are negotiating with the human representatives aboard their vessel. Kovacs' response was sharp. Admiral, you're aboard an enemy ship? That's an unacceptable risk. We're moving to extract you immediately. Commander, I gave an order. Stand down your weapons. Sir, with respect, you may be under duress or coercion. I'm following standard protocols for hostage situations. Lieutenant Grant pulled up tactical displays, showing the Valdran reinforcement fleet positioning for attack. Commander, she's not listening. We need to respond before this gets out of control. Okonkwo's jaw tightened. Lieutenant, signal our fleet. Defensive formation Sigma. Do not fire unless fired upon. Show them we're not the aggressors here. The 200 human ships moved instantly into a tight defensive sphere. Their shields linked together, creating a unified barrier. Weapon systems remained powered but not locked on targets. Fleet Commander Kovacs saw the human response as confirmation of hostile intent. All ships fire warning shots. Show these humans we mean business. 50 Valdran ships fired particle beams across the bows of nearby human vessels. The shots missed deliberately, but passed close enough to make the threat clear. Dr. Cross watched the exchange with resignation. Commander, they're not going to back down. Valdran military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force. They think superior numbers guarantee victory. They're wrong, Lieutenant Grant said quietly. She looked at Okonkwo. Commander, request permission to demonstrate our defensive capabilities. Okonkwo hesitated only a moment. Granted. Non-lethal demonstration only. Grant transmitted orders to the human fleet. One of the human destroyers detached from the defensive sphere and moved into open space. It positioned itself in the path of potential fire from the Valdran fleet. What are your people doing? Admiral Calum demanded. showing your fleet commander why attacking us would be a mistake. Okonkwo replied. Fleet Commander Kovacs saw the isolated human ship as an opportunity. Target that vessel. Full weapons barrage. Disable it. 12 Valdrin ships opened fire simultaneously. Particle beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles all converged on a single human destroyer. The human ship didn't dodge or attempt to evade. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The space around the destroyer rippled and bent. Every weapon strike that should have hit the hull was redirected harmlessly away, deflected by some kind of gravitational manipulation. Not a single shot made contact. The human ship sat completely undamaged in the middle of a weapon storm that should have vaporized it. Kovacs stared at her tactical display in disbelief. How is that possible? Our weapons should have overwhelmed any shield technology. Dr. Cross smiled slightly. Your weapons did hit our shields. Commander, we just don't use electromagnetic barriers like you do. We bend space itself. Your attacks literally miss us because we curve the trajectory of incoming fire around our hull. The demonstration had its intended effect. Valdrin ships stopped firing. Their commanders uncertain how to counter a defensive technology that operated on principles they didn't understand. Fleet Commander Kovacs, this is Commander Okonkwo of a human vessel Pathfinder. We have no desire for conflict. Admiral Calum is here voluntarily participating in diplomatic discussions. We demonstrated our defensive capability not as a threat, but as information. You cannot harm us with conventional weapons. Continuing to attack would waste your ammunition and achieve nothing. Kovacs felt her certainty crumbling. She'd been trained to solve problems through superior firepower. But firepower meant nothing if it couldn't hit the target. Commander Okonkwo, I demand you release Admiral Calum immediately. Admiral Calum's voice cut through the tension. Fleet Commander, I am not being held against my will. I am conducting negotiations as a ranking Imperial officer. You will stand down and await further orders. Sir, High Command will not approve of the situation. Then High Command can speak to me directly. Until then, you answer to me. Stand down. Now. Kovacs had no choice but to comply. Her fleet powered down weapons but maintained aggressive positions around the human ships. Aboard the Pathfinder, Okonkwo turned to Admiral Calum. Admiral, we just proved we can defend ourselves. Your fleet commander attacked us and accomplished nothing. I'm hoping this demonstration convinces your leadership that military solutions won't work here. It might convince them to send more ships, Calum said honestly. The Empire has resources you can't match. If they decide to commit fully, they could bring 5,000 warships to the sector. Then we deploy countermeasures you haven't seen yet. Lieutenant Grant said, Admiral, that destroyer that just deflected your weapons? We have 400 more, just like it positioned throughout this region. Plus stealth ships you still haven't detected. Plus automated defense platforms. Plus weapon systems we deliberately haven't revealed. We're not bluffing about our capability to defend our territory. Dr. Cross added context. We studied the Valdrin Empire for centuries. Admiral, we know your tactics, your doctrine, your ship capabilities. We've wargamed every possible scenario. We're not confident we could win a total war against your entire civilization, but we're absolutely certain we can make it so costly that you'd regret starting it. Admiral Calum understood deterrence theory. The threat didn't need to be absolute. It just needed to be credible enough to make the cost of aggression unacceptable. What happens now? Calum asked. That depends on your leadership. Okonkwo replied. We're willing to continue negotiations. We're willing to demonstrate good faith through limited cooperation on non-military matters. We're willing to prove we're not the enemy. But we're not willing to surrender our freedom. If the Empire insists on conflict, we'll fight. And both sides will lose far more than either could gain. Calum activated a secure communication system to contact Imperial High Command directly. The conversation would determine whether humanity and the Empire found a peaceful path forward or plunged into war neither side really wanted. The entire galaxy watched and waited for the Valdrin Empire's decision. Supreme Counselor Vera Thane listened to Admiral Calum's report with growing frustration. She led the Valdrin High Council. the governing body that made decisions for 847 star systems. No problem had ever seemed too large for the Empire to solve through military force or diplomatic pressure. Until now. Admiral, explain to me again how 200 primitive human ships defeated 300 of our finest warships without firing a single shot. Calum's voice came through the secure channel with unusual humility. Supreme Counselor, they didn't defeat us. They made attacking them pointless. Their defensive technology operates on principles we don't understand. Our weapons simply cannot hit them. Counselor Marcus Reed spoke up from his position at the council table. Then we overwhelm them with numbers. Send 5,000 ships, 10,000 if necessary. Eventually they'll run out of power or make a mistake. Counselor Reed, they've had 600 years to prepare for exactly that strategy, Calum replied. They've studied every military campaign in our history. They know how we think and how we fight. They position automated defense platforms throughout their territory. They have stealth technology we cannot detect, and they claim to have weapons they haven't yet demonstrated. I believe them. Supreme Counselor Thane drummed her fingers on the table. So you're recommending we simply accept their demands? Recognize them as equals? That will encourage every other species in Imperial space to demand independence. With respect, Supreme Counselor, other species in Imperial space don't have the capability to defend themselves. Humans do. We're not talking about a rebellion from within. We're talking about an external power that developed independently and now demands recognition. Counselor Yuki Sato, the youngest member of the High Council, offered a different perspective. Perhaps we're looking at this wrong. What if we treat humans not as a threat to Imperial authority, but as an opportunity to demonstrate Imperial wisdom? We've maintained power for 8 centuries through strength. Maybe it's time to show we can also maintain power through adaptation. Explain, Thane said. The galaxy knows about the human situation by now. Every intelligence service is watching how we respond. If we attack and suffer heavy casualties, we look weak. If we negotiate and recognize human sovereignty, we look pragmatic and reasonable. We can frame this as the Empire choosing peace when war was possible. That's strength, not weakness. Marcus Reed shook his head. It's capitulation. The moment we recognize one independent power, others will demand the same treatment. Then let them demand, Sato replied, and we evaluate each case on its merits. Most species lack the capability to defend themselves independently. Humans have proven they do. There's no shame in recognizing reality. Supreme Counselor Thane considered both arguments. The traditionalists wanted to maintain the status quo through force. The pragmatists wanted to adapt to changing circumstances. Both positions had merit and both had risks. Admiral Calum, what's your assessment of human intentions? Do they want more than sovereignty over their claimed territory? I've spoken extensively with their commander, Supreme Counselor. My assessment is that they genuinely want peaceful coexistence. They're not seeking to expand into Imperial space or undermine our authority. They simply want to be left alone to develop their civilization as they see fit. And if we leave them alone, what prevents them from becoming a threat in the future? Nothing prevents it, Calum admitted. But attacking them now guarantees they'll be our enemy. Recognizing their sovereignty gives us the opportunity to establish normal diplomatic relations, trade, cultural exchange, perhaps even cooperation on matters of mutual interest. That seems preferable to permanent hostility with a technologically advanced neighbor. Counselor Sato added another point. We should also consider the precedent this sets for other species we might encounter in the future. The galaxy is vast. There could be other advanced civilizations beyond our current borders. How we handle the human situation will inform how those future contacts develop. Supreme Counselor Thane made her decision. Admiral Calum, you'll continue negotiations with human representatives. Our position is as follows. We will recognize human sovereignty over their currently claimed territory in exchange for several conditions. What conditions, Supreme Counselor? First, humans must agree to respect Imperial borders and not expand into territory we claim. Second, they must agree to share information about any external threats they encounter. Third, they must agree to limited trade relationships on terms we'll negotiate separately. Fourth, they must allow Imperial observers to visit human space periodically to verify treaty compliance. Admiral Calum relayed the conditions to Commander Okonkwo immediately. The human leader listened carefully, discussed with his advisors, then responded, "We can accept the first 3 conditions with some modifications. We agree to respect current Imperial borders, but reserve the right to claim unclaimed territory beyond those borders. We'll share information about external threats that could affect both our civilizations. We're willing to discuss trade agreements on equal terms, not dictated terms." And the 4th condition? Calum asked, "We'll allow Imperial observers with the same reciprocal rights. You can visit our space. We can visit yours. Equal access, equal oversight. We won't accept being monitored without the same ability to monitor you." Admiral Calum transmitted the counterproposal to the High Council. Supreme Counselor Thane discussed it with her fellow counselors. The debate was heated, but ultimately practical concerns won over pride. "Accepted," Thane declared. "Draw up the formal agreement. We'll ratify it within 1 standard week." The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Valdran Empire, which had never negotiated with any species as equals, had just recognized human sovereignty. Political analysts across dozens civilizations scrambled to understand the implications. Some saw it as imperial weakness. Others saw it as intelligent adaptation. But everyone understood that something fundamental had changed in galactic politics. Aboard the Pathfinder, Commander Okonkwo shook hands with Admiral Calum in the human gesture of agreement. "Admiral, I hope this is the beginning of a productive relationship between our peoples." "As do I, Commander, though I suspect the hardest part is still ahead. Actually implementing this agreement while managing expectations on both sides." "Probably true," Okonkwo admitted, "but we've taken the first step. That's more than most people thought possible even a week ago." Lieutenant Grant interrupted their conversation. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from an unknown source. The signal is coming from outside both human and Valdran territory. It's encoded, but our systems are translating it." She played the message. A voice filled with curiosity and calculation spoke words that sent chills through everyone present. "This is High Ambassador Torin of the Krell Dominion. We've been observing your negotiations with great interest. The Krell wish to establish contact with humanity. We have much to discuss." Admiral Calum's expression darkened the moment he heard the name Krell Dominion. Commander Okonkwo noticed a reaction immediately. "Admiral, you recognize that name." "Unfortunately, yes. The Krell are the Valdran Empire's oldest enemy. We fought territorial wars with them for 300 years. Neither side has ever achieved decisive victory. We maintain an uneasy peace through mutual deterrence." Dr. Cross pulled up data on the Krell from human intelligence files. "We've been monitoring them along with everyone else. They control approximately 400 star systems, technologically comparable to the Valdran Empire, militarily aggressive. They expand through conquest and rarely negotiate except from positions of overwhelming strength." Lieutenant Grant analyzed the transmission more carefully. The signal originated from a position 60 million kilometers from here. They've been watching this entire situation unfold. "Of course they have," Calum said bitterly. "The Krell maintain surveillance networks throughout this region just as we do. They're always looking for opportunities to exploit Valdran weakness or distraction." Commander Okonkwo considered the implications. "They see our negotiation with the Empire as a potential opportunity, either to gain a new ally against the Valdran or to attack while Imperial forces are focused on us." "Probably both," Calum agreed. "The Krell are strategic opportunists. They'll pursue whichever option provides the greatest advantage." A Krell ship appeared on sensors, decloaking 30,000 kilometers from the Pathfinder. It was smaller than either human or Valdran capital ships, but heavily armed. Its hull bore scars from previous battles, maintained deliberately as symbols of martial pride. The Krell transmission continued. "Human Commander, I am High Ambassador Torin. The Krell Dominion respects strength. You have demonstrated capability that impressed us. We wish to discuss mutual interests. Okonkwo glanced at Admiral Calum before responding. Ambassador Torin, humanity appreciates the Krell interest. However, we've just concluded negotiations with the Valdrin Empire. We're not looking to immediately enter new diplomatic relationships. Understandable. But consider this, human commander. The Valdrin will never truly accept you as equals. Their entire civilization is built on assumptions of superiority. They negotiate with you now because you force them to, not because they respect you. The Krell understand strength. We would welcome you as genuine partners. Admiral Calum transmitted on a private channel to Okonkwo. Commander, the Krell are trying to drive a wedge between humans and the Empire. It's a standard tactic. They want you to question our sincerity. Are they wrong? Okonkwo asked bluntly, does the Empire truly accept us as equals, or are they just being pragmatic because they can't defeat us easily? Calum hesitated. Honesty warred with loyalty. I don't know, he finally admitted. The High Council agreed to recognize your sovereignty. Whether they'll honor that recognition long-term or look for ways to undermine it, I can't say with certainty. Commander Okonkwo appreciated the honesty. He opened a response to Ambassador Torin. Ambassador, humanity values strength, but we also value peace. We've just avoided one potential conflict. We have no interest in inserting ourselves into the middle of an existing rivalry between the Krell and Valdrin. Then you choose to align with the Empire against us? We choose to align with no one against anyone. We're claiming neutrality in your long-standing dispute. Ambassador Torin's voice took on a harder edge. Neutrality is a luxury, human commander, in this region of space. Species either align with the Empire, align with the Dominion, or get conquered by whichever power moves first. There is no neutral ground. Dr. Cross muttered quietly. They're trying to force a binary choice. Classic manipulation tactic. Lieutenant Grant suggested an alternative approach. Commander, what if we demonstrate that neutral ground can exist if it's defended properly? Okonkwo nodded slowly, understanding her thinking. Ambassador Torin, you claim neutrality is impossible. We intend to prove otherwise. Human space will remain neutral in Valdrin Krell conflicts. Any attempts to violate that neutrality will be met with the same response regardless of which side attempts it. Brave words from a species controlling only 34 colonies. Yes, 34 extremely well-defended colonies. We've demonstrated our defensive capabilities to the Valdrin. We're prepared to demonstrate them to the Krell as well if necessary. A second Krell ship decloaked, then a third. Within minutes, 20 Krell warships surrounded the diplomatic meeting point. The Krell were making a statement about their military reach. Admiral Calum's fleet commander, Kovacs, transmitted urgently. Admiral, the Krell are positioning for potential attack. Should we move to support the human vessels? The question hung in the air. The ink on the human-Valdrin agreement wasn't even dry yet, and already circumstances were testing whether it meant anything real. Commander Okonkwo looked at Admiral Calum. Admiral, you're not obligated to defend us. The treaty doesn't include mutual defense clauses. No, it doesn't, Calum agreed. But it does establish that we recognize human sovereignty. If the Krell attack you now, they're attacking a power we've acknowledged as legitimate. That makes it an imperial concern. Calum opened a channel to Fleet Commander Kovacs. Commander, move our ships into defensive positions supporting the human fleet. The Krell need to understand that attacking humanity means engaging the Valdrin Empire as well. The Valdrin ships repositioned, forming a united front with human vessels. The tactical display showed a mixed force presenting coordinated defense. Ambassador Torin's voice carried surprise. Admiral Calum, the Valdrin Empire is defending humans? This is unexpected. This is diplomacy, Ambassador. We've made agreements with humanity. We honor our commitments. If the Krell wish to test that resolve, you'll face both our fleets. Interesting. The Empire and humanity are already allies despite just meeting. The galaxy changes quickly. Torin's tone shifted slightly. Perhaps we were premature in assuming humans would be easily influenced. They seem to have chosen their side. We've chosen our own side, Commander Okonkwo corrected. Admiral Kalem is defending us because attacking us would violate the regional stability he's trying to maintain. It's strategic, not emotional. The Krell can pursue the same strategic relationship if you approach us with respect rather than manipulation. Silence stretched for several seconds. Then Ambassador Torin responded with something that might have been respect. Perhaps humanity is more sophisticated than we assumed. Very well, human commander. The Krell withdraw for now. But we will be watching. If you prove to be as capable as you claim, we may indeed pursue formal diplomatic contact. On equal terms, as you say. The Krell ships cloaked and disappeared from sensors. The immediate crisis passed, leaving humans and Valdrin facing each other with new questions about what their relationship actually meant. 6 months after the first contact, Lieutenant Sophie Grant walked through the new diplomatic station at the border between human and Valdrin space. The facility was jointly built and operated, a symbol of the unprecedented cooperation between the two civilizations. Half the station followed human design principles. Efficient, practical, minimalist. The other half reflected Valdrin aesthetics. Grand spaces, artistic flourishes, displays of cultural achievement. The contrast was jarring, but somehow it worked. Grant had been assigned as a human liaison officer, working alongside Valdrin Subcommander Yuki Sato, who'd been promoted after advocating for the human treaty on the High Council. They met daily to coordinate the growing trade relationship and resolve minor disputes before they became major problems. Lieutenant Grant, we received requests from 6 more Valdrin merchant companies asking for trade access to human markets, Sato said during their morning briefing. They're particularly interested in human computational technology. We can approve 3 of them, Grant replied. The other 3 have connections to military contractors. We're not ready to share certain technologies yet. Sato nodded understanding. Fair enough. On a related note, the High Council is requesting information about your gravitational manipulation technology, not for military purposes. They want to explore civilian applications. Faster cargo transport, more efficient orbital stations, that kind of thing. I'll forward the request to Earth Science Council. They'll probably want something in return. Maybe access to Valdrin quantum communication technology? Our deep space colonies would benefit from faster-than-light communications. This was how things worked now. Careful exchanges of information and technology, each side evaluating the other's trustworthiness through small steps before taking bigger ones. It wasn't friendship exactly, but it was functional cooperation. Commander Okonkwo arrived at the station accompanied by Admiral Kalem. They'd formed an unusual partnership over the past months, working together to ensure the treaty succeeded despite skeptics on both sides. Lieutenant Grant, Admiral Kalem and I are heading to the Outer Rim together, Okonkwo explained. We detected unusual energy signatures in unclaimed space beyond both our territories. We're conducting a joint exploration mission to investigate. Grant pulled up the data. The energy signatures were unlike anything in either civilization's database. Potentially natural phenomena, but possibly evidence of another unknown civilization. Shouldn't you take separate expeditions? Grant asked. Maintain your independence? Admiral Kalem smiled. We could, but combining resources makes more sense. One human ship with advanced sensors, one Valdrin ship with superior long-range capability. We cover more ground and share discoveries equally. It was a small example of something that would have been impossible 6 months ago. The mental shift from viewing each other as rivals to viewing cooperation as mutually beneficial was happening gradually across both civilizations. Not everyone accepted the new reality. Back on the Valdrin homeworld, traditionalist factions in the Senate argued constantly that recognizing human sovereignty was a mistake that would haunt the Empire. They demanded the High Council find ways to undermine human independence. Similarly, on Earth, nationalist groups protested that any cooperation with the Empire was betraying human independence. They wanted complete isolation, refusing all contact with galactic civilizations until humanity was strong enough to dominate rather than merely defend. But moderates on both sides were winning the political arguments, if barely. The benefits of cooperation were becoming too obvious to ignore. Waldron merchant companies were profiting from human trade. Human colonies were gaining access to imperial scientific knowledge. Both militaries were learning from each other's tactics and technology. Sub-Commander Sato received an urgent transmission during the meeting. Her expression shifted from neutral to concerned. We have a situation. The Krell Dominion is requesting formal diplomatic negotiations with the Joint Human-Waldron Authority. There is no joint authority, Okonkwo said. We're separate civilizations. The Krell apparently don't see it that way anymore, Sato replied. Ambassador Torin specifically addressed his request to the Human-Waldron Partnership. They want to establish a three-way non-aggression treaty. Admiral Calum looked thoughtful. That would fundamentally alter the balance of power in this region. The Empire and Krell have been rivals for 3 centuries. A three-way treaty would create unprecedented stability, or unprecedented opportunities for betrayal, Grant pointed out. The Krell aren't known for honoring agreements when circumstances change. Neither was the Empire until 6 months ago. Okonkwo said diplomatically. Circumstances forced everyone to reconsider old assumptions. They debated the proposal for hours. Eventually, they agreed to recommend that their respective governments at least listen to what the Krell were proposing. Not commitment, just willingness to talk. The response came within days. Earth's unified government and the Waldron High Council both approved preliminary negotiations with the Krell, with a condition that humans and Waldron would consult with each other throughout the process. Not as allies exactly, but as partners with aligned interests. 3 weeks later, the first three-way diplomatic conference took place aboard a neutral station built specifically for the occasion. Human, Waldron, and Krell representatives met in a triangular conference room designed to give no species positional advantage. Ambassador Torin opened the discussions. The galaxy is changing. Old rivalries based on assumptions of scarcity and zero-sum competition no longer serve anyone's interests. The Krell Dominion proposes a new framework. 3 major powers, each respecting the other's sovereignty, cooperating where interests align, and competing peacefully where they diverge. It was a revolutionary concept for this region of space. No empire, no hierarchy, no assumptions about which civilization was naturally superior. Just 3 powerful groups choosing cooperation over endless conflict. The negotiations took months. Treaty language had to be precise enough to be enforceable, but flexible enough to allow for future adaptation. Each side had to surrender some of their precious sovereignty in exchange for collective security. But eventually an agreement emerged. The Treaty of 3 Powers established formal borders, outlined trade relationships, created dispute resolution mechanisms, and most importantly, committed all 3 civilizations to defending each other against external threats. When the treaty was finally signed, Lieutenant Sophie Grant stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic station and watched ships from 3 civilizations patrolling their shared borders. Human vessels with their dark hulls and gravitational technology. Waldron ships with their elegant designs and ancient pride. Krell warships bearing the scars of countless battles. They weren't friends. They barely trusted each other. But they were working together, and that was enough. The galaxy had evolved. And humanity had proven that sometimes the best way to protect your freedom was to help others protect theirs. Strength through cooperation rather than domination. A new model for how civilizations could coexist. Grant smiled and returned to work. The treaty was just the beginning. Now came the hard part. Actually making it work day by day, decision by decision, crisis by crisis. Building something lasting from fragile beginnings. But if the past 6 months had taught her anything, it was that impossible things could become reality when necessity demanded it. Humans had gone from quarantine primitives to equal partners in galactic politics in one remarkable year. What they would accomplish in the next decade was limited only by their imagination and determination.